Please. You were saying...
Oh, you gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. You get me?
You know, I really don't remember you being this opinionated.
So, you think you've witnessed the peak of Hollywood dysfunction? Strap in. Rumors are swirling that Rachel Zegler's team might already be consulting lawyers to challenge Disney and a few other major studios for dropping her from upcoming projects after the disastrous Snow White remake.
I can't get over the sense of entitlement and to show up, to criticize the bosses, to suggest that they're white supremacists, to demand more money like you're not getting paid adequately, to rip on the plot that you've been asked to embody as the actress. Like, she's just one big ball of entitlement, which is what we all hate.
Sweetie, you're being paid $25 million and you're on TV saying your bosses suck. So Rachel Zegler, maybe keep your mouth shut.
Sources suggest studios like Sony, Paramount, and Lionsgate abruptly pulled future deals, potentially violating contracts and sparking whispers of a major lawsuit brewing behind the scenes. That's right, Hollywood's latest fairy tale princess might soon swap her poisoned apple for legal documents, and this scandal-ridden story suddenly feels less like Disney magic and more like a gritty Netflix drama.
The fact that this film is completely falling apart, we're going to take a look at how bad this movie is actually doing in the box office, because it is hilariously bad. It is a complete and total humiliation for Disney, and like I said, they deserve it all, okay?
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP. Why not write some new movies? You guys sit around, you have billions of dollars, they keep going back and rewriting the classic.
Because nothing screams gratitude in Hollywood quite like serving court papers to the very industry that handed you your golden ticket.
She was plucked out of obscurity by Steven Spielberg. All you say is thank you, Mr. Spielberg, and you keep saying that for the next 50 years.
But then again, this is Tinseltown, where common sense usually has only a guest starring role. By now, it's impossible to scroll through your newsfeed without stumbling upon the carnival of chaos swirling around Snow White.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry.
She's now bragging about the success of Snow White, which is a movie that's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and mainly because of her, and because nobody wanted to support her. She did, on camera, say that members of Trump's movement and anyone who disagrees with her doesn't have to go show up and give her any more money, and I guess people followed suit. There are empty theaters all around the country.
Disney poured around $300 million into revitalizing the timeless story of a sweet princess. And guess what? In this updated edition, the sweet princess decided to sweetly torch her entire Hollywood future with a few ill-timed political posts.
Behind the scenes, you guys know as well as I do that those executives like Spielberg are looking at that saying, Rachel Zegler can F right off.
I'm a narcissist.
You are.
Even better, rumor has it that studios like Sony, Paramount, and Lionsgate are frantically ghosting her future projects, presumably faster than you can say 7 CGI dwarves.
The latest victim of really bad ideas is finally here. The magical Disney DEI woke equity version of the 1937 classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But because the word dwarves is now apparently controversial, Disney took that part out of the movie altogether, and now the movie is just called Snow White, which would be like Disney taking lions out of Lion King, or mermaids out of The Little Mermaid.
If that's not ripe for a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, I don't know what is. Rumors of Zegler's legal action have the tabloids salivating, because obviously the next logical step after starring in a big-budget flop is to sue everyone in sight for defamation, breach of contract, or both. And if you think that's outlandish, welcome to a place called Hollywood, where the standard formula for success apparently includes a meltdown, a subpoena, and a meltdown about the subpoena. Had the film soared to $1 billion, we'd be having a very different conversation. But with the box office more abysmal than a high school talent show, well, we're left with a lawsuit as the new plot twist.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it, you didn't direct it, You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the job.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
One might say it's a bold strategy. Hello, I contributed to a $300 million fiasco, and now I'd like you to pay me for dropping me. Sarcasm aside, the rumors suggest she's leveling claims of blacklisting, freedom of speech violations, and who knows what else. Somewhere, Disney's legal department is probably wishing upon a star for a simpler day.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts like her life is so bad.
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion, but the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings.
Of course, none of this legal mayhem would exist if Snow White had quietly emerged as a half-decent reinterpretation of the 1937 classic. Instead, it's become a massive sinkhole swallowing careers, investor dollars, and the last shred of Disney's dignity.
It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke, but also don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all.
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
If Disney wants to make more woke films that tank at the box office, they are more than welcome to do that, but maybe think of an original idea.
Rachel Zegler, once hailed as the next unstoppable A-lister, seemed to have snagged the coveted golden ticket, starring in a Disney princess remake, netting future roles at major studios, and becoming the shining it girl. Then came the barrage of political outbursts. Free Palestine, screw Trump, rabble about capitalism. She did the unthinkable in The House of Mouse. She broke the carefully curated illusion of corporate neutrality, and in the process, apparently triggered more suits than an Italian tailor.
But Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. I don't know how anyone would ever want to go into business with her ever.
She's a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's crisis mode when it comes to Disney.
As rumor has it, her outspoken stance cost her future parts, big paychecks, and that squeaky clean Disney reputation. But wait, did you really think this fiasco was reserved exclusively for Zegler? Gal Gadot has her own swirling cloud of controversy, courtesy of her open support for Israel, which enraged an entirely different corner of the internet. If you want to watch a corporate meltdown in real time, look no further than the marketing behind Snow White.
Snow White is being played by Rachel Zegler, who doesn't really sound like she's ever bothered to actually watch the original 1937 movie. What's really interesting about this current Snow White is that conservatives aren't going to go see it because it's super woke, but liberals are saying the same thing for a much different reason. It's all because of Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen in the movie. Gadot is also apparently controversial because she is an Israeli who spent 2 years in the Israeli Defense Forces, a real-life Wonder Woman. She's obviously pro-Israel.
On one hand, you have pro-Zegler fans chanting "Free Palestine." On the other, you have pro-Gadot fans praising her strong stance on defending Israel. Meanwhile, Disney is trying to sell tickets to everyone. Unsurprisingly, it's not going well.
Snow White starring Rachel Zegler opened to a dismal $43 million, snagging the title of the lowest debut weekend for any Disney live-action remake, beating 2019's Dumbo at $46 million. They beat Dumbo. Shame on you, but it's for the worst ever.
As jokes across Twitter point out, supporting one lead feels like you're actively hating the other. So, rather than risk an existential crisis, people just didn't show up. The result? A second weekend box office drop hovering around 60-65%.
Snow White is officially Disney's biggest box office disaster of all time, and with the second weekend rolling in now as we speak, the train wreck is only getting worse and worse for Disney.
And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Hollywood proves you wrong again. Enter Jonah Platt, a name that sounds vaguely familiar if you've tracked nepotism's greatest hits. Yes, he's the son of Snow White's producer, Mark Platt. Jonah's now infamous post, where he scolded Zegler for throwing her personal politics into the film's promotion, went viral.
My dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie? for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for, Platt wrote in the now since deleted comment. According to Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and People, this is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Jonah Platt would continue, free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged.
And I also want to make this clear. It's not because Rachel Zegler tweeted out Free Palestine or put something on Instagram that said Free Palestine. It's because she directly tied this to promoting the Snow White trailer.
The best part? He promptly deleted it, presumably after the ringleaders at Disney discovered that Nepo Baby Jr. was only giving Rachel Zegler more ammunition for that rumored lawsuit. Let's just say that the internet didn't exactly applaud Platt's approach. Instead, it provided glorious new memes mocking the meltdown. Naturally, all this condemnation zeroes in on one star. Fans are pointing out that while Gal Gadot's remarks sparked plenty of controversy, she's not getting half the smear pieces that Zegler is. At least, not from the big outlets. Instead, mainstream media is peppering the actor formerly known as Disney's Golden Princess with articles so scathing they make typical gossip columns look tame. This polarizing coverage has only fueled the lawsuit narrative. After all, if you suspect blacklisting, having every trade publication paint you as the film's sole Grim Reaper might be Exhibit A in your legal argument.
Do you know, how hard it is to find an attractive young woman in Hollywood who can act in sin? It's not hard. Who just isn't going to offend half the country. There'll be 25,000 more just like her knocking on the same doors that she had open to her. She had the opportunity of a lifetime, and instead of being humble and grateful, she was entitled and a snot. And I will look forward to her not getting cast in any more movies for a long time until she actually does learn something about humanity and humility.
Now, this entire circus resembles the fiasco with Melissa Barrera, who got axed from the Scream franchise after showing empathy for Palestinians. And then there's Gina Carano, fired from The Mandalorian for comparing vaccine mandates to the Holocaust. She's also taken legal aim at Disney, claiming unfair termination. So, if you're Rachel Zegler, you might be thinking, hey, if Carano can file a lawsuit, why not me? Granted, Carano's situation entailed some over-the-top social media rhetoric, but the principle remains.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
If there's no specific clause in your contract forbidding political speech, studios might have to justify termination in court. It's quite the complicated puzzle, enforcing free speech rights in an industry built on carefully scrubbed images and bottomless corporate disclaimers. The elephant in the room is that little phrase, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. Sure, Zegler is within her rights to share hot takes on Middle East conflicts or ex-presidents. But if that stance potentially sinks a $300 million blockbuster, you can bet the suits at Disney have their reasons to part ways.
The movie that nobody wanted to see, and I mean that seriously, nobody wants to see this movie. Ticket pre-sales are nowhere near what Disney was hoping for. Let's just say if you wanted to buy tickets for the 9 p.m. show tonight, wherever you are in America, you'd be just fine.
The question is whether those reasons hold up in a courtroom. Maybe they're hidden in a standard morality clause, which typically covers issues like hate speech or criminal activity. Rachel's critics argue that endorsing Free Palestine or bashing Trump isn't hate speech in the typical sense. So where does that leave a studio that's hemorrhaging hundreds of millions of dollars, faced with investors who want someone's head on a platter, possibly right in the middle of a legal free-for-all, with Zegler's attorneys claiming their client is being punished for constitutionally protected speech?
Disney, despite losing over $1 billion on their last 4 movies, as they continue to shove woke politics into people's faces who just want to go to the movie, laugh, cry, and go home. Look, people don't want to be lectured when they're watching a movie, and they certainly don't want to be told that they're bad people. But that's what Disney continues to do.
At this point, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Florence Pugh, who recently tiptoed into the same political minefield by posting about Palestinian causes. So far, zero news about Pugh being fired from Thunderbolts or losing Marvel roles, leading fans to cry hypocrisy. Why is Zegler the scapegoat, but Pugh still rocking the red carpets? The cynic in all of us says that maybe Pugh's projects just haven't bombed, so the suits are less eager to slash her from the payroll. Or maybe the Marvel brand is so bulletproof that it deflects these controversies more easily. Either way, it underscores the baffling pick-and-choose method that studios employ for handling political fires.
We are now at a 1 out of 10 on IMDb for the new Snow White, and it couldn't happen to a better person. What is the lesson to be learned here with this Snow White disaster?
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them.
Let's not forget the film's actual performance. Snow White is now projected to close out its theatrical run somewhere in the realm of $69 million domestically, according to box office analysts who probably needed therapy after crunching those numbers. 2017's Beauty and the Beast raked in $504 million in the US alone and topped $1.2 billion worldwide. Disney likely anticipated Snow White to match or exceed that success, especially with a rising star like Zegler. Instead, they're facing a loss that could go upwards of $250 to $350 million if the second weekend slump is any indication.
This movie is going to be losing Disney hundreds of millions of dollars, and they deserve every bit of loss they get from this film.
Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again. Ever.
It had the lowest opening, under 50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
A meltdown of this magnitude invites finger-pointing on a biblical scale. While Zegler is taking the brunt, it hardly helps that Gal Gadot stands on the polar opposite side of the same controversy. If this fiasco were a comedy, it might be entertaining. Instead, it's a tragedy for everyone involved. Or, from our perspective, the greatest cringe fest Hollywood has produced in ages.
1.9 out of 10 on IMDb, and those, by the way, they weren't dwarves, they were called bandits. So the Snow White doesn't, like, the amount of, like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Leave it the alone. Yeah, that's it. If it ain't broke, break it. Like, leave these stories alone. By the way, if she never opened her mouth and she didn't do all this nonsense, people would have gone and watched the movie. They would have made their money, but then people would have been disappointed after the math.
And just when you thought Hollywood would break out of this feud with an amicable handshake, along comes Variety with a scalding article portraying Zegler as the film's liability. The piece framed her Free Palestine posts as a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, another corner of the press is championing her as a bold woman speaking truth to power, like some modern-day Joan of Arc, except with fewer miracles and more canceled studio contracts. Dig deeper, and you'll see that Tinseltown's vested interests lean heavily toward Israel, a sentiment echoed in the press's coverage. It's not a secret that Hollywood fosters deep connections with pro-Israel organizations, so anyone stepping out in support of Palestine might be risking their seat at the table. Plenty of fans argue that's precisely what's happening to Zegler. She basically landed on the industry's do not call list, with the rumor mill swirling about how each major studio quietly terminated potential deals with her.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's crisis mode when it comes to Disney.
But Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. I don't know how anyone would ever want to go into business with her ever.
She is a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
If you believe the speculation, Rachel Zegler stands on the precipice of a massive lawsuit. Something about wrongful termination and potential blacklisting. She might try to recoup the tens of millions she would have made if Snow White had soared and the other planned roles had fallen into her lap. But does she really want to take on Disney, Paramount, Sony, and Lionsgate simultaneously? It's like trying to box a hydra. Even if you land a blow, 2 more studios might sprout from nowhere to bury you further. Legal experts aren't exactly convinced she can win a must-reinstate-me type of demand, though rumor has it Gina Carano is trying a similar approach in her battle with Disney. Because that's exactly what we all want from the Star Wars universe, a forced cameo from a blacklisted actor courtesy of legal mediation.
The thing that really shocks me about this story, Disney and all these media companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, right? Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
Now, for Disney, as you probably remember, all of this publicity, the Zegler interviews, the Daily Mail leak, caused a lot of unexpected, for them anyway, pre-production problems. People weren't supposed to see and understand just how unwatchable the new Snow White was going to be. It was supposed to be, kind of a surprise, but now there was no hiding it.
To be fair, part of the public is now weirdly on Zegler's side, despite once loathing her for what they called spoiled attitude and cringy feminism. Her unrelenting stand on Palestine, right or wrong, bought her renewed respect from progressive audiences. According to social media, she's no longer a misguided Disney actress. Now she's a champion of speaking truth to power. Good luck turning that allyship into a sustainable career if you're simultaneously losing the backing of major studios. It's a perfect reminder that support from fans doesn't magically pay the rent, especially when your name is rumored to be on every casting director's do not hire list.
And now she's trying to reinvent herself because there's been so much blowback. And you can only imagine the studio calls about this woman behind the scene. Like, oh my God, we're $242 million in, and our lead actress hates our film, our actors, our storyline.
In a fair world, none of this would overshadow the actual cinematic qualities of Snow White. But here we are, rummaging through the wreckage of a fiasco so profound that even the dwarves are overshadowed by raging political warfare. Is there any chance Disney regrets the entire concept? Possibly. If there's one thing the House of Mouse hates more than negative press, it's losing money. Zegler was once their next shining star, a golden goose for future franchises. Now, she's teetering on the edge of becoming Gina Carano 2.0, with a swirl of lawsuits, blacklisting rumors, and fans screaming about moral hypocrisy. So where does this story go from here? Maybe Zegler's rumored lawsuit will vanish, replaced by a quiet settlement and a hush-hush NDA. Or maybe it will explode into a legal circus, overshadowing even the meltdown we've already seen. This is Hollywood after all. Never underestimate the thirst for sensational drama. As for Disney, they'll likely keep forging ahead, rebooting fairy tales and hoping we'll forget this entire fiasco. Because if there's one thing the industry excels at, it's memory-holding disasters. Until, of course, the next scandal arrives. And here's your final cynical takeaway. The magic mirror on the wall might have something to say about Hollywood's spin cycle. Congratulations, you turned a beloved children's classic into a full-blown culture war. Whether you side with Rachel Zegler, Gal Gadot, or no one at all, this entire spectacle reveals the grim underbelly of Tinseltown, a place that loves bold voices until those voices threaten the bottom line. If a plummeting box office and rumored lawsuits are any indication, Snow White's happily ever after might just be waiting in some parallel universe where politics and princess remakes don't collide. Until then, pull up a chair, grab the popcorn, and watch the credits roll on a fiasco that no magic kiss can awaken from the dead.